Welcome, all pregnant families, midwives or birth workers. This is Tracy Anderson Askew, your host for the Transform Your Birth podcast, changing your mind about birth one story at a time. Each week we will be exploring a birth story through the lens of what birth can teach us. I'll be digging deep into each story so you can learn what it is that can change the way a birth unfolds. We can't control birth, but we can influence it. So listen in to find out how. Enjoy. Kirsten shares with us the story of her two births. The first one was long and ultimately very straightforward. She decided that her next baby would be born at home through the local public hospital. She was surprised about how different each labour is. She experienced the sensations very differently for baby number 2 and had to navigate a baby who was posterior. She talks about fear and letting go of time during labour. Ultimately, she learnt that she was strong and could do anything. She gives us all a great reminder that we are able to handle so much more than what we think. Some great birth wisdom shared in this episode.
Before we begin, a note from our sponsor. This episode has been brought to you by Transform Parenting, an organisation that provides courses, coaching and community from pregnancy through to the first 7 years of a child's life. Most of the stories you will hear through this podcast are graduates of the Transform Your Birth workshop held in Canberra. Our Transform Your Birth Today course is now available to anyone, anywhere, at any time, and includes all the wonderful wisdom of this course and live weekly catch-ups when you need it with our host, Tracy. For a little taste, please accept our pregnancy gift offer, which contains free the first few lessons and some essential wisdom for pregnancy. The link can be found in these show notes or visit transformyourbirth.com.au. And now for the episode.
Welcome everybody. It's great to have you again with me this week. Today we've got the lovely Kirsten, who's had 2 babies. And as you already know, I love getting women who've had more than one baby because they often each birth teaches us things and they get us clearer and clearer into how we want to approach this and what's important to us as birthing families. So welcome, Kirsten. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And she's got her little man, Luca, in her baby holder. So if you're watching this, you're going to see the cutest little face. How old is he now?
He is just going on to 8 weeks.
Right. So she's pretty fresh out of the birthing space. So thank you for doing this. Now, Kirsten, when you were pregnant with your first baby, how did you feel about the idea of giving birth? And then tell us, what sort of preparation did you decide to do?
For my first birth, I did a lot of preparation, probably because I had more time back then. But I read lots of books and I signed up to quite a few courses, and of course I signed up to your course, Tracy. And and listened to lots of podcasts, and I felt quite excited. Like, I suppose I'd never given birth before, so I was really sort of excited to do it. And have a natural birth. And then after doing Transform Your Birth, I think that just took it to a whole nother level, really, for me and my partner, because I was really excited, but I think doing the Transform Your Birth course just made my husband really understand what was going on a lot more. And I don't know, just really get into the headspace of it and really get into it with me. And the checklists and everything were just like so into his, what he loves. And so we were just able to really prepare and
takes a lot of the pressure off, doesn't it? Prior to that level of preparation, the woman can feel like it's all on her shoulders.
Definitely.
When you've got a partner who knows what to do and what not to do, we've got a what to do list and a not to do list. It can really shift things for the better for the couple, and it's an important moment in your lives. So if you're able to go through that doorway into parenting hand in hand, knowing each has a very valid and important role, not just a tokenistic role, then that can set you up beautifully for parenting as well. So were you afraid of birth at all, or you just felt like you were on for the challenge?
I think I was really up for the challenge, and I kind of was a little bit worried maybe, like looking back on it. I was honestly probably more excited than worried. I hadn't experienced it before. Like, I'm always sort of ready to challenge myself, and yeah, I think obviously there's, you know, people tell you stories, which I suppose a lot of them are not quite all that helpful. So there was this little thing in the back of my mind that was like, oh, I'm not sure, but I think at the end of the day, I was more excited than anything else for it to just start and for me to have my daughter in my arms. Like, it was just this idea that I just couldn't get out of my head. So every day was just this thing that I was reading another book and I was listening to another podcast and I was doing something around it.
Yeah, we're very aware as pregnant women that we're walking into the mystery. We know we can't control this, and so there can be those little voices, and stories can get lodged in your subconscious and can potentially find their way into your labour room as well if we're not careful. So it's always important, if people come at you with their stories, to just kind of say, look, rather than tell me your story, what I'm interested in is, what did you learn that helped you? And that's a much better question. And from that place, we can get some great little tips and tricks around managing the sensations or whatever might unfold on the day. So how did Isla's birth unfold, your first one?
It was a bit of a long birth. So it started at about 10 o'clock at night time. And I kind of have a little bit of regret, like, looking back on it, because I was just so excited.
You put a lot of energy into that nighttime period.
Oh, yeah. And like, you just don't know how long it's going to go for, do you? So
yeah,
I kind of look back at that and kind of wish I'd just gone to bed and not been so, you know, happy that it was happening.
Which is a hard thing to do, but that little piece of wisdom right there is worth tucking away. You try to be as normal as you can for as long as you can, and if you go into labour at night, do your best to sleep. Yeah,
but for somebody who's been looking forward to being in labour for so long,
that wasn't going to happen.
So I sent my husband off to bed and I was like, yeah, you go sleep, like, and then I came out and I sort of did it throughout the night, and it was anywhere between like 5 and sort of 8 to 10 minutes. There wasn't anything sort of too regular happening. And then in the morning, Jack woke up and we spent the whole day labouring together, and he was amazing because he had all of your checklists, Tracy, so he was just incredible. And then nighttime came, and and I was getting very tired by that point, and I was starting to sort of pick up a bit more. And my husband was talking to the midwife, and she was like, "Oh no, it's not time to come to hospital yet. Maybe put her in the bath." So then I jumped in the bath and laboured in there for a little while, and it was getting really intense. And looking back on it, like, I don't know, the midwife must have known it wasn't quite time, but you know, I kind of felt like things were moving along, and so the midwife taught my husband how to do heat packs in the microwave, like really big heat packs with like bags and towels and stuff.
Yeah.
And so he did a whole bunch of those and got out of the bath, and she was like, look, she needs to sleep. So, and I remember like trying to listen in between contractions on their phone call together. So I was like, I have to know what's happening. And so she was like, put her into bed and hopefully she can have a rest. So then I jumped into bed, and this was at about 2 a.m. and jumped into bed, and Jack, did all the heat packs and everything. And I probably got like 45 minutes sleep, which, for in the middle of a labour, I feel like is pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I woke up at like 3, and it was all sort of happening, and I didn't wake my husband up or anything. And then at about 7, Jack woke up and came out, and he was like, how's everything going? And I was like, oh, I need to get to the hospital like right now. This is crazy. I'm so sick of this. It's been days at this point. Like, just get me in there. I'm done. And I'm so tired. And he was like, okay. So he like tiptoed out, and he was talking to my midwife again, and she was like, okay, well, I'm going to be at the hospital at 10. Meet me in there at 10. And so Jack came back in and was like, how about, we'll meet, I'll make a coffee, and, we'll do a few things, and we'll go, and we'll meet her in there at 10. And I was like, no, like now, I need to go now. I'm done with this. Like, take me. And he was like, okay. So then he does his thing and, says that he's going to take me in, and he's just acting calm and doing his thing and packing the car slowly while I'm like,
oh my God, that must have been irritating.
And
I want to go there now. Yeah.
And I'm still labouring away. And he comes in and he's like, do you want a coffee? And I'm like, no. Like, just take me to the hospital. And anyway, time must have went by pretty quickly, because he kept saying, yep, we're going. And then the midwife wasn't there. So he was like trying to stall. And then it was like 9:30 or something, and he was like, all right, the car's packed, let's go. And then we jumped in the car, and he drove down and got into hospital at about 10. I think it was like 10 to 10 or something. And then she came out at exactly 11. And so we jumped in the bath, and it was just an incredible experience. And I don't know, I look back at it, and at the time, like, I would have definitely been like, I'm done. But I look back at it and I just think, what an amazing experience. Like, I wouldn't have traded it for anything in the world, because I just feel so proud that I was able to do that.
Yeah. And look, it still brings tears to you even when you talk
it really does, actually.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe it. And it's the hardest thing I've ever done, but like the most incredible thing I've ever done.
Mm. So, Kirsten, when you were preparing for baby number 2, you made some different decisions. Do you want to talk us through what was driving your different decisions around where you wanted to give birth?
Yeah, so I think going into the first labour, my biggest fear, and I remember talking to you about this, Tracy, was the car ride.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know, I feel like it's going to get you out of the zone, and I really wanted to be in the zone the whole time and sort of doing my thing. And I look back on it, and the car ride, honestly, it wasn't really anything like to be worried about, and it all went fine. But for my second birth, I didn't want to be taken out of the zone, and I thought, there wasn't anything that was part of my first birth that I had to be in the hospital for.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it was all very straightforward, and I had a water birth, which was amazing, and everything that happened in the hospital, like I was labouring at home for 36 hours. I gave birth in the hospital for 1 hour.
Yeah.
Like, none of that needed to be there. I didn't feel like, it could have all just happened here. And so for my second birth, I was like, why make the trip? Why not just have that experience here? And we could hire a bath and, have just a relaxing sort of time here. So that was my main sort of motivation for kind of changing it, I think.
Yeah. It's the only, undisturbed birth is what supports the physiology to do its thing, supports the woman's body to respond organically, intuitively to the forces of labour and the way the baby's descending and all of that. And when we disturb birth, we can change things in that process. Now, for many women, most women, they feel safer in a hospital, and it's wherever you feel safe that's the most important thing. But what you're describing there, Kirsten, is you felt safe at home.
So safe, yeah.
Yeah, and so it was certainly an option that you wanted to go ahead with. And how were you feeling about the birth, and what sort of prep did you do for baby number 2?
I was feeling excited again. It's hard to describe it when you've got a toddler, living with you, and your life's a lot more chaotic, I suppose. Second time round, there was a lot less time on my hands, so I wasn't really able to read, the books and get into the mindset of it as much as I was the first time around, which is a bit of a shame, but life changes.
Yeah. Life happens.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was excited, and I was probably more excited this time around to actually meet him. The first time around, I think I was just so tired by the end of it. And I remember her coming out in the bath and the midwife lifting her up and me being like, oh, like, shit, there's a baby. Like, I completely forgot that was the end result.
He was so in it. It's like, oh, I get a baby at the end of this.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember looking at her being like, whoa, like, I just forgot.
That happens. Women, I've heard a lot of women describe that. It's quite funny.
Yeah. I was just so tired, I think.
Yeah. You're so relieved it's over.
And so relieved. I remember her coming out and me being like, oh, thank God. But yeah, the second time around, I think I had a little bit more fear of like that real last stage where, the baby's coming out. So I think the main thing that I did was talk to you about it. And I listened to quite a few of your podcasts, which were just really helpful, and just knowing that this is even just the basic thing of knowing that this is such a normal thing that so many women go through. Like, that reminder in itself is just like, you can do it. Which it just seems so basic, but for me, it's quite helpful. It was quite helpful. And then I had a book that I read as well, which sort of said, you don't have to get rid of all of your fears to give birth. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And
nice.
I found that quite helpful as well, because I remember being in your class going, and you said something like, coma women can give birth. And that's just, for me, was like a really good reminder. Like, there's nothing involved in it for me to actually do it. Like,
yeah.
Even the pushing part it just happens. Like you just
The reflex,
you don't have to, you don't have to do anything. It just all just happens.
Coma Woman is a powerful reminder to us women that it's actually wired into our body. You don't have to be conscious to do it. So you don't have to make birth happen. You simply allow it to happen. And the best way to allow it to happen is to be okay with however you feel right now. So to just be really open to letting things happen, which is not natural to our state. We like to be in control and we like to do it and make happen. So it's that surrender. But I love that metaphor of the coma woman because it just reminds women that, okay, there's nothing to do. I can just be. Yeah, it's a very different way of looking at it. So,
and my book it didn't state the coma woman, but it also said something around like, you don't have to let go of every fear to give birth.
Yeah.
And the reminder that you don't have to do anything at the end of the day was just like, it's just going to happen no matter whether I let go of the fear or not.
Yeah.
So,
and there are some fears you'll never let go of, I like to delineate that too with my families is some fears you can be let go when you know more and you understand the process, and then some fears you'll never let go of and you have to wear those in your pocket. And then sometimes we can reorientate ourselves around fears by learning to perceive them in a different way. But you're right, you don't have to let go of all your fears to be able to give birth. I think that's an important point. Thank you for bringing that out.
And after reading that, I was just kind of like, just let it go. Like, it's going to be there. It's an experience that I had. I didn't tear anything the first time around. And, it was just sort of a lot of pressure and it was just the intensity of it. And it's just so big that's hard to let go of.
Yeah.
So I kind of just was like, just drop it kind of thing. And, so going into it, I just, it was sort of just one of those things that I had there.
Yeah. Every woman's got to walk the journey, particularly with baby number 2, of now you don't have, I loved how excited you were with number 1 because you didn't know what was ahead.
Ignorance is bliss.
Exactly, ignorance is bliss. With number 2, what I find with mums is sometimes that brings up different fears. And there is knowledge there now and experience, and that can work for you, but also it can scare you too. So it gives you the opportunity for those little fears to come into consciousness where we can work with them or not, or learn to accept them. So tell us.
But I also look back at that as well, thinking I thought my fear going into it would have been the length because it was such a long labour, and it was 37 hours all up.
Yeah.
And I always thought going into my second birth, it'd be like, oh my God, like how long is this one going to be? Like that.
Yeah.
But that had absolutely nothing to do with it. I just find that really fascinating that the length of it wasn't something that affected me.
But you're a little bit worried about the second stage of labour.
Yeah, exactly. And that pushing stage, which at the end of the day, I look back at that and it was an hour. And what's an hour out of your life, really?
So tell us, how did baby number 2's birth unfold?
Yeah, so I woke up at 2 a.m. with this one and went to the loo and everything sort of started happening. And I remember my midwife was telling me for this time around 5-minute contractions. I had to call her and let her know. And I started timing them and they were at 5 minutes, but thinking, my first one was so wild. I'm fine. And I woke my husband up and I let him know, and he was like, let's call your midwife. And I was like, honestly, like, no, let's not do that. So
let's not make a tired midwife.
Yeah, exactly. And starting at 2 a.m. No, thank you. So this time around, I did go back to bed. And I slept until about 5, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
That was smart.
Kind of on and off. It's not like a deep sleep or anything, but it's kind of like this sleep where you're there, but you're kind of drifting. And then I woke up at 5 and sort of plodded around the house, and I had a few things that I wanted to get ready, like some pillows being out and some fairy lights and stuff, so that gave me something to do, take my mind off it a little bit. And then at 7 o'clock, I called my midwife and told her, and we're on the phone for about 15 minutes, and she's timing the contractions each time they come. And then she says, okay, they're at 5 minutes. I want to come over. And I was like, honestly, I don't think you need to. And she was like, even if I come over, set everything up, and then I can go if, feel like you need me. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So by this point, it was like 7:30, got off the phone, went and woke Jack up, and I said that our midwife will be here at 8. So then he started getting everything ready. The bath needed to be filled, and there was a few things that needed to be hung that I was sort of waiting for the day to do. So he gets up and does that, and then the midwife comes over, and she sets up her laptop, and she sets up the there's like a mandatory rehab sort of thing that they set up for the baby just in case something happens.
Yeah.
With oxygen and stuff. And so she sets all of that up. And I'm kind of just wondering, and she's looking at me going, I don't know whether I should be here or I shouldn't be here, because they were at 5 minutes, 5-minute contractions, which apparently for your second birth is like when they want to be around. But me having long labours, I kind of just knew that it wasn't really happening at that point. But she did want to stick around, probably more out of like policies and stuff. So she needed to stick around, and I was just sort of having chats and laughs with them and conversations, and my husband was getting stuff for me. And then it was a couple of hours that went by, and I sort of left the room because the bath was set up in this room, dining room, and then I left the room to go into a more quiet, dark space, which is our living room, and labour in there for a bit. And the sensations that I was feeling were very different to my last birth. My last birth, it was like really top of the belly, kind of contracting down, whereas this type of contraction was more like pelvic, like heat almost.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. And I just kind of thought, how strange that it feels so different.
Mm.
And the midwife came in after a couple of hours and said, how you going? And I was like, look, it's not like my first. It's sort of in my bum and in my pelvis and like really tight and like a lot of pressure down into the back of my spine. And and she was like, okay. So she was like really calm and telling me that that's fine. And then apparently I kept complaining about how much like my lower back and my bum was hurting and my pelvis. And my midwife took my husband away and was like, I think what's going on is the baby's coming out posterior, so he's facing the front of my pelvis, not the back of my pelvis.
Yeah. So babies who are rotated and where they've got this spine on the mother's spine, can really change the way a labour feels, and it can make it very slow too, because the head doesn't present as well on the cervix to sort of open the door. So how long were you in that sort of state, Kirsten?
So I think that started happening at around about 11. And I found what really helped was my husband was sort of behind me, and I was pushing a chair, and my bum was pushing up against him, and he was against the wall to support himself.
Yeah.
And we were labouring like that for quite a while, like standing and sort of leaning forward. And every time my midwife saw me sort of, lay backwards, she was like, lean forward, lean forward. So, I was on the ball a lot, and I was standing up with my foot on the chair a lot, leaning forward. And I think I was doing that up until around about 12. And then all of a sudden it got really intense, and I was like, I just need to have a shower, get me in the shower. So then I was in the shower and had heat on my back, which was really helpful. And then my midwife was getting ready. She was putting her gloves on, and she was, yelling at all, not yelling, but telling all the midwives, like, it's happening, get ready. I think it's going to happen in the shower. And it was getting really intense at that point. They were coming on really strong and quick. And then my husband points out that my dog is in the shower, and she hates water. And every time a contraction would come on, my dog would come over and lick me, like under the things in the shower.
Isn't that funny? Dogs can sense these things. Yeah. Wow.
Oh, it was
Were you aware of
strange. No, I wasn't until my husband sort of pointed it out, and she was like, keep an eye on Lily. Like, I can't kick her out of the shower because she's in the shower with you. And then every time you have a contraction, she comes over and she licks you, and she gets under the water. And then when I noticed it, I was just like, how strange. And then that completely took me out of the zone.
Yeah.
And then I was in there. It was good, actually, because I felt like it was really like getting really intense. And still at this point, my waters hadn't broken. So, my next contraction was like at 11 minutes or something after Jack pointed that out. And I was like pretty disappointed, actually. Looking back at it, I was like, man, damn, like, I thought it was happening. And everyone was like, no, like, it's good. You needed a break. They were coming on really hard and fast, and your waters haven't broken yet. So it's good that you were able to just rest.
Yeah, you had a break of about 11 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point too. We can have natural pauses in labour, and sometimes and they can go for longer. Sometimes our carers feel the need to push things along and might offer you synthetic oxytocin when in fact it's Mother Nature offering you a bit of a break. So
yeah. And I felt like I really needed it because the heat and the sensations I was feeling in my pelvis, like they were a lot more intense than the first time around. And I was probably able to do a 37-hour labour last time around because it was just a completely different type of contraction.
Yeah.
Whereas this time around, all of the sensation and all of the pressure was like really down in my bum. And just having a break like that was just, it probably really got me through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened then?
So then 10 or 11 minute sort of stall, and then my midwives are standing outside going, no, this isn't happening. So I watched them take off their gloves, and I was like, no. No. And and my dog was in there the whole time with me. It was so fascinating. So then I didn't want to use all of the hot water because that was also something that was on my mind where, you go into hospital and you have unlimited hot water, whereas our house doesn't. So I thought, okay, let's get out of the shower. So then we went back to the birthing ball for a few hours, and it was still that kind of sensation, the heat and the pressure in my pelvis. I never got like the same sort of contraction as I did the first time around.
Yep.
And then, we're in there doing the ball and with my leg up for a little while longer. And then I kind of just got over it a little bit, and I was just like, all right, it's happening. And I just, my mind was just like, it's going to happen. Like, I'm just going to make this happen. Like, I'm getting in the bath. I'm done. And the midwife was like, you sure you want to hop in the bath? And I was like, yes, I'm hopping in the bath. So then I hopped in the bath and laboured in there for a little while. And the main thing I remember about that is we actually have a clock just outside. And
you looked at the clock, didn't you?
I was up against the end of the bath and I was watching the clock. And one of your things in your in the class that you run is remove all of the clocks, and we did, except for that silly clock outside.
What did that do? This is a good point for people listening. That when you look at the clock, you're working against the body's natural state of presence and timelessness. In fact, in endorphins, they help us to experience an altered sense of time. And so the way to work against that is to have clocks around and to be focusing on the time, and it's lunchtime and dinner time and breakfast, and all of that's going to really put women back into that different part of their brain where they get into this, how much longer do I have to keep going thinking? So, Kirsten, when you were looking at the clock, how did you experience it then?
Oh, it completely changed. Like up until then, I feel like time had gone so fast, and even looking back on it, I just feel like, the day sort of just happened.
Yeah.
And then once I got in the bath and I just had that clock that I was just continually looking at, every contraction I'd look up and I'd be like, that's 5 minutes. That's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's 5 minutes. And it was so frustrating, and I didn't quite realize what I was doing.
Yeah.
I didn't think to ask anyone to take it down at that point. Like I didn't even realize what I was doing until I kind of came back into, consciousness. And I was like, why is this taking so long? And it was probably the first time where I was like really aware of time.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's that damn clock outside. And my husband was off doing something. And my midwives I had 2 midwives and a student midwife. And I remember just turning around, telling my midwife, can you take that clock down?
Yeah.
And I remember her face was just like, whoa. What?
I don't realise. Sheila Kitzinger has a great quote. She's written a lot about birth. She's an anthropologist. And she says the most dangerous piece of equipment in the labour room is the clock. She uses the word dangerous because it messes with you. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was every contraction. I was looking at it and it was just in my line of sight. Like I was laying down and the clock was like right there.
Yeah. Did you feel like pushing in the bath? Did that happen? The pushing phase? Or
it started happening and then it started happening towards the end. I think I was in the bath for like 40 or 45 minutes, and it started happening right at the very end, and then things really started to pick up. And then my waters broke, and unfortunately there was meconium in the water. And I don't know whether it's a hospital policy or a home birth policy, but when there's meconium in the water for a home birth, they need to take you out of the bath. Which I was devastated by, because the only birth I had pictured up until that point was a water birth.
Yeah.
And I remember just feeling like I wanted to cry because to me, it was the only option. It was the way I'd given birth before. It was the only way I knew how to do it.
Mm.
And I was really, really devastated. But by that point, you didn't have much time to think about it.
Yeah. So what position did they put you in for second stage to try and baby rotate?
Yeah, she told me to get up onto this couch, actually, put my hand up on the side of the couch and have my knees and sort of crawl.
Yeah.
And I think the water at that point had my muscles weren't working and I was so tired and exhausted and I could only do maybe 5 contractions in that sort of style, in that baby crawling style. So I leaned up against Jack and I was hugging him, and I think I sort of did that for about 4 or 5 contractions, and then I fell back onto the couch between one of the contractions, and I think probably purely out of exhaustion, really, like I was really tired at that point. And then the midwives were saying that I think we just need to really make this happen because of the meconium, and I can't really remember the dangers of the meconium at that point, but I think they were sort of saying that they wanted to get him out. So then that's when they really started doing sort of
coaching you to push.
Yeah. Coaching me to push and telling me, really counting down the 10, 9, 8 and telling you to push for 10 seconds. And that felt like probably the longest time, but Jack told me afterwards that it was probably only about 10 minutes of doing that. And then head came out, and then we did it again, I think twice, and then his body came out, and then they just popped him up on me. And I remember sort of looking around afterwards going, what a strange way, I suppose, to give birth these days, because had all my things here and I was at home. It was just as intense as it was sort of just a moment of wow, how amazing to have been able to, and what a privilege, I suppose, as well, to be able to do this.
And what was your meeting like with this one? Because I remember you said with Isla it was very, oh my gosh, a baby. What was it like this time?
Yeah, I think this time around I was very much more throughout the labour, I was talking to him a lot more because of the pressure. I could really feel him in there.
Yeah,
and throughout the labour, the whole time I was really telling him, okay, dude, let's make this happen. Come on, come into my arms. And I was really talking to him a lot more, and very aware that that was the end goal, to get him out.
Yeah.
And to have him in my arms. And, I had this vision of just him coming out and just hugging him. Whereas for Isla's birth, that wasn't really part of it for me. It wasn't. I didn't really talk to her throughout the birth or anything, and I'd kind of forgotten that was an end goal. Whereas this one was really I'd experienced it before. I had this vision of being a
baby in utero can feel very surreal, and it doesn't quite translate into being a little baby, potentially until they land, or even later. It can take a while, but it is interesting. I've had 4 babies, and every landing of my sons all had a different quality to it, a different sense of adjustment and, okay, you're here. Okay, this is the next phase. So I always say to people, don't get too attached to your moment of meeting to be a certain way, because there's going to be a lot of forces at play that will influence how you experience it. But don't underestimate the power of bonding, because it is a biological necessity. Now, Kirsten talked a bit about meconium, and I just want to touch on that. One of the things that can happen in a labour is babies can poo. Now, typically they don't. They don't poo until they're born and they've landed, but they can poo in utero even before labour starts. And we're usually very aware that that meconium looks a bit different, but during labour it can be a sign that baby's distressed. And if they ingest the meconium, it can be quite dangerous for their ability to breathe when they're born. So carers always have to err on this side of caution, which was why in this case the midwives were very keen for Kirsten to push before she was really working with her body, and was just going to follow the feelings of her body. So that's probably why they wanted you to push, in order to make sure that, you know, if he did need help, that he got out quickly enough to be able to support him. So that's probably why that happened. Now, Kirsten, you've had these two very different journeys of welcoming your baby. What did you learn about yourself?
I think the biggest thing is like, and it's so basic, but just the fact that I can do anything, really, like going through that whole experience twice, doing natural birth twice, you know, the sense of pride that I have for that, and the fact that they were completely different is also, you know, I look back on it and I just think that, you know, the ability to be flexible is just so important, and adaptable to sort of situation, any situation, is really important. But the fact that I did it my way, and there were so many people who would give me a funny look, or never had anyone outrightly tell me like, oh, you shouldn't have a home birth or anything like that. But, you know, every time I mentioned it, not every time, but I would mention it to people, of course, because I was excited that I was having a home birth the second time round, and people would be like, oh, are you sure that's a good idea? And I bloody did it, you know, and like, I just think, yeah, I can do anything like that I want to. And even if people don't agree with it, or have their own thoughts around it, I can do what I want to do, and I did it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And we, as women, we have to walk our own path. It's where we feel safe and where we feel drawn to. And I think it's important that we don't ever take away women's choices around these things, that we do have the right to choose where we give birth, and to receive the right support for how we want to go about this. So having any sort of firm ideas about where a baby should be born is nobody's business, really. It's not even an opinion worth forming. We can only inform or create those opinions for ourselves. Yeah, and to feel it.
And honestly, if I did get that sort of look, or, you know, feeling of like, oh, why are you doing that? I would tell them the frameworks that the public system have in place to support you.
Yeah. And
to make it a safe birth, and as safe as possible for both mum and bub. And honestly, most of the time at the end of it, they'd be like, wow, like, really? That's all through the public system? And I'd be like, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. So we don't have that option through every public system, but we do here in Canberra now. It took us many, many years to get it. The other option for home birth is also an independent midwife, a private practicing independent midwife, and that's something people can explore as well. So Kirsten shared a lot of great wisdom through both of her experiences. I think her stories really do highlight that we have to walk our own path and choose where we feel safe giving birth, that every birth is just so different and it's going to challenge us in different ways, working with our fears, working with our mindset, getting ourselves, our partners prepared for the mystery of what it is we're going to walk into, and to learn to trust our bodies and what our bodies have this incredible ability to do when it comes to bringing these babies in. So thank you all for listening, and we hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we hope to talk to you again soon. Bye for now. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe and share this podcast. This episode has been brought to you by Transform Parenting, an organisation that provides courses, coaching and community from pregnancy through to the first 7 years of a child's life. It is a place where you can learn, get support and grow into your role as a parent. Why not take advantage of a special gift for all pregnant women at transformyourbirth.com.au? Or if you have children, we have a gift for parents also.